Exclusive contract novel from Feilu Novel Network. I just want to be honest, how did the school flower agree? The bell of the millennium has already passed early, and the pace of the times is still slowly moving forward. 20 years ago, Ling was reborn without WeChat or Meituan.Taobao has only been established for 5 months, and the unicorn ByteDance has not yet been born. And at this moment, he is facing the era of high school seniors. This most beautiful era, this most nostalgic era. The ivy on the wall is lush, and the classmates on the playground are full of vitality. Ling stood up and, under the shocked gaze of the class, looked at the school flower she had a crush on 20 years ago and said, "Luo Xiayun, I like you." Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. Rebirth. Confession. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The acceleration of force. Hand in your homework, hurry up. It's so noisy. Ling felt like there was a group of mosquitoes buzzing in his ear, causing him a headache. He struggled to open his eyes and found himself surrounded by students wearing school uniforms. What's going on? Isn't he supposed to be at work? What the hell is going on? He thought he hadn't woken up and fixed his eyes on it. A messy classroom. There are trash cans and various cleaning tools in the corner, and mops hang on the windowsill. There is a familiar crack on the wall above the blackboard. The black cracks are like black centipedes, winding and crawling on the wall. Textbooks piled up in small hills on everyone's desk. The countdown sign for the college entrance examination on the wall. And these youthful faces. All of this is so familiar. Memory is like a tide, surging towards him in waves. I am reborn. Ling looked incredulously at everything around her and reached out to pinch her thigh. It hurts so much. This is true. It's not a dream. He looked up at the countdown board and saw that he was back 20 years ago, 5 months before the college entrance examination. Hey, Ling, are you listening to me or not? A furious voice exploded in Ling's ear. He looked up. What caught the eye was a delicate and fair face. A standard small melon seed face with bangs, 2 round eyes like 2 black grapes, both large and divine. When staring at someone, the eyes are watery, as if there is a clear spring inside. Especially with that proud expression, always like a little swan holding its head high. Proud and domineering, yet still retains the cuteness of a young girl. Ling quickly found this face in her memory, class monitor Luo Xiayun. The one with the best grades in the whole class, and also the proudest one. She is what teachers call a good student, and what parents call someone else's child. Like many academic scumbags, Ling is not favored by class monitor Luo Xiayun. Even Luo Xiayun looked down upon Ling, an ignorant and inexperienced bastard, from the bottom of his heart. So in their past lives, they had no intersection at all. Later, Luo Xiayun's family suffered a downturn and they owed a lot of debt. She can't even afford her high school tuition. Luo Xiayun was unwilling to drop out of school like this and missed out on her college dream. I can only go out to work and earn tuition fees. Later, he was tricked into going to the red light area to accompany him with drinks. During a KTV, Luo Xiayun was forcibly brought into a private room by a group of local thugs. According to eyewitnesses at the scene, the situation at the time was extremely dire. Luo Xiayun finally stabbed the rogue leader to death with a broken beer bottle, and he himself died on the spot because he had lost too much blood and was not rescued. This is also the last news that Ling knows about her. Ling looked at the girl in front of her. Why didn't she notice before that the class monitor was quite good looking? I used to think that she was constantly pushing homework and being a lackey for the class teacher, which was annoying to death. I don't seem to find it so annoying anymore. After all, it's just a little girl. Luo Xiayun impatiently said, how many more times do you want me to say it? Why do you always procrastinate when I ask you to collect homework? Can you save me some trouble? Her curved eyebrows furrowed, and even her moist lips slightly pursed, with a face full of displeasure. Ling suddenly stood up, startling Luo Xiayun. What are you doing? Don't hand in your homework and still maintain this attitude. Ling ignored Luo Xiayun's screams and walked straight towards the first row of seats. The classmates around were immediately attracted by Luo Xiayun's voice, and even the boys playing in the hallway stopped moving. Everyone looked towards Ling. More than 50 pairs of eyes were fixed on Ling's direction, discussing one after another. He felt as if all the blood in his body was going in the opposite direction, and the gentle breeze of the evening 20 years ago seemed to blow over again. Ling's heartbeat accelerated and her footsteps became somewhat slow. I wanted to see that face immediately, but suddenly felt a little scared. I haven't received it yet, but I'm already afraid of losing it. The sweet feeling of secret love during adolescence once again filled his heart after many years. Ling walked up to the girl in the first row who was reading a book. Luo Xiayun, I like you, she said loudly. Luo Xiayun's face was bewildered, followed by a blush on her fair and smooth face. She wore a cute ponytail and a cute hairpin on her head. A simple and clean coat, emitting a faint soap fragrance. She had a little baby fat on her face that had not yet faded, deep double eyelids, and two almond eyes that were as charming as gemstones set on her face. A tall and straight nose bridge, with smooth lines flowing down from the eyebrow arch, leaving a beautiful curve on the face. Cherry lips, naturally moist red lips, and beautiful curves when smiling. If every boy had a dream lover during his adolescence, the boy from Ling's school would undoubtedly be the object of his imagination, Luo Xiayun. She is like the most beautiful and holy puzzle in adolescence, the softest piece in a boy's heart. There are very few boys who do not like Luo Xiayun, and there are many forms of expression that they like. The most common occurrence is where the Luo Xia rhyme appears, accompanied by the behavior of males desperately showing themselves in front of the opposite sex. For example, in physical education class, when shooting specifically at Luo Xiayun passing by. In order to get a glance from Luo Xiayun, I worked hard to get praise from the teacher. A boy with a unique skill is even more determined to showcase his charm. Playing the piano and singing is not a problem, and it is common for him to dance and be cool in literary evenings. Of course, Ling did the foolish things mentioned above in order to gain the attention of Luo Xiayun, but she didn't do much. He is different from other boys in that others choose what they are good at. Ling has done it all, and in order to win the favor of the goddess, she does everything extremely well. Therefore, many jokes have also been made. Although it looked a bit silly at the time, many years have passed and it has become a beautiful memory of adolescence. But the most regrettable thing is that after doing so much, the two of them still couldn't be together in the end. This has always been a regret in Ling's heart. Therefore, the first thing he did during his rebirth was to immediately confess his love to Luo Xiayun. Chapter 2. A Simple Era, a Long-Winded Old Man. You are listening at novel full.audio. Luo Xiayun looked at Ling at a loss, as if frightened by his actions. The two red hues on her face became increasingly apparent, until her entire face turned the same color as the red apple. The classmates around were immediately ignited by Ling's bold move. Adolescent teenagers are already hormonally active, with nowhere to vent their energy, and when they seize the opportunity, they will make a desperate fuss. Now with such big news, it won't take a few days to finish gossiping. In an instant, the classroom exploded with a pot, and the people pounding the tables made strange noises. The whole classroom became as lively as a zoo. Oh, Ling. Confession, come and watch the play. Be careful if someone tells the teacher. The boy jokingly said, I knew you didn't have a good heart. Ban Hua, promise him that he really likes you. Ling, stop making trouble. You're a toad and still want to eat swan meat. TSK finally confessed, don't you mind? confessing in person, having the courage. A boy who liked Luo Xiayun was furious and wanted to trouble Yi Ling, but was stopped by someone. My grass, this is mother. Yi Ling, please stay away from Ban Hua. Foolish. Get out of here, do you also deserve to confess with Luo Xiayun? Countless voices of questioning, mocking, and teasing drowned out Yi Ling. However, his mind was now almost blank, and no sound could be transmitted into it. He just looked at Luo Xiayun. It seems like I can never see enough. This kind of Luoxia charm is really cute. No wonder she is her own youth. Behind her, Su Xian looked at Yi Ling and Luo Xiayun, trembling with anger. Her fingers were tightly gripping a corner of the book, almost tearing the paper apart. Su Xian shouted loudly, "Stop making noise, be quiet." The class monitor's authority was particularly strong, and most of the people immediately stopped speaking. Su Xian calmed down for a few seconds before running out. Yi Ling didn't even care what happened. After a while, the crowd watching the excitement gradually dispersed. The heat of adolescence is like this, 3 minutes of heat, and once it's over, it's over. Soon, Su Xian returned. Yi Ling, Luo Xiayun, the teacher asked you to go to the office. She stood on the podium and shouted coldly. Yi Ling raised her eyebrows, got up, and walked away. When passing by Luo Xiayun's side, she even smiled at her. Luo Xiayun's head was buried in the desk, not looking at him. Someone in the class muttered softly, "Humph, give a little report again." Su Xian's eyes widened and he sternly said, Who said that?" The person immediately stopped speaking, hummed a few words, and rolled his eyes. Luo Xiayun's face was bitter, it was really a sudden disaster. She hesitated for a while, sighed, and walked towards the teacher's office. The two of them arrived at the entrance of the office. Luo Xiayun knocked on the door and said, "Teacher Wang, do you call me?" The door opened and Wang Hongtao said, "Come in." Luo Xiayun walked inside, and Yi Ling followed behind her. Just as she was about to enter, Wang Hongtao's eyes widened. "Yi Ling, you young man, give me the outer punishment first," he said sternly. Luo Xiayun was startled and her body trembled. Wang Hongtao said, "Luo Xiayun, come first." Yi Ling stood outside indifferent. He propped his leg back, leaned against the wall, and casually looked down. The familiar high school campus is always a semi-finished playground, with various building materials piled up in the corners, wooden boards, and covered with plastic sheets. The rudimentary runway was covered with coal slag. This type of track is very knee-demanding because if you fall and hit it, at least it will also peel off the skin. I also have to endure the pain and rinse the wound to remove the black coal residue inside. At the westernmost, there are several simple cement platforms that are built side by side, with a wooden board in the middle, which is the table tennis table. Further ahead is a muddy field overgrown with weeds, on which several single and parallel bars are erected. This is where the regular school track and field team trains. I didn't realize before that this school is so small, Yi Ling muttered. At first glance, the nostalgic alma mater is simply 2 buildings and a playground. There is one building in grade 1, grade 2, and a separate building in grade 3. Nowadays, many primary schools are larger than this scale. However, Yi Ling still misses it very much. After all, these simple 2 buildings and playground carried 3 years of his youth. Yi Ling, stand up. What does it look like to hang around like? Wang Hongtao's roar came from the office, and Yi Ling stuck out her tongue and stood a little further away from the window. It's just after class time now, and the hallway is full of students. Seeing Yi Ling being scolded, there were curious and mocking gazes around her. Yi Ling had already seen this scene without any surprise. This old antique still has such a hot temper, he shrugged. He leaned closer to the door panel and carefully listened to the movements inside. The most crucial year. Don't be distracted. Although only a few words could be heard, Yi Ling could still guess what Wang Hongtao had said through these fragments. But it's just some cliché D things. The college entrance examination is very important. Thousands of soldiers and horses cross a single wooden bridge. The third year of high school is the most important year in life. Only by getting into a good university can one change their destiny, something like that. Yi Ling looked up at the sky in silence, almost forgetting how verbose this old thing used to be. I estimate that Luo Xiayun's ears are going to cocoon when she hears it. It's really not easy. Chapter 3. Teacher Wang, pay attention to hair care. You are listening at novel full.audio. After a while, the class bell rang and Luo Xiayun emerged from the office with her head hanging down. A well-behaved student like her, being called into the office by the teacher to give a lecture, must be very sorry in her heart. When she passed by Yi Ling, she looked up at him in panic and then ran over. Wang Hongtao's impatient voice said, "Yi Ling, get out of here. Oh, I can't bear to scold good students. This is just throwing fire at me." Yi Ling casually pushed the door in. Class teacher Wang Hongtao is a middle-aged man who has been teaching books in high school in this small town for decades. He is very dissatisfied with his life and often looks frustrated. "I don't like anyone, especially these kids in my class." In his words, when he was in high school, it was much harder than this. Nowadays, students are all in the midst of blessings and do not know their blessings. Only a few students with good grades in the class have a slightly positive expression. The rest of the people are generally impatient. Like middle-aged men of this era, Wang Hongtao drives a small, run-down car and often wears a toed mirror, imagining himself as either Jin Chenggu or Guo Fucheng. In fact, his face is very unsuitable for wearing glasses, and he is as comical as playing a sketch. But no one reminded him, so Wang Hongtao thought he was really handsome. Until a new teacher saw his appearance and laughed so hard that he couldn't stand up, Wang Hongtao finally took off his toed mirror with a black face. I never saw him wear it again afterwards. Wang Hongtao felt annoyed at the sight of him, a dead pig who was not afraid of boiling water. First, he cursed, "No hope," and then roared, "Stand up for me, with your hands behind you, don't look like a hooligan." Yi Ling thought to himself, he really doesn't know what a rogue looks like. However, the old man was feeling angry and didn't want to really make him sick, so he lazily adjusted his posture and barely stood straight. Wang Hongtao said, "What did you do just now?" "What did you do?" "I didn't explain Wang Xiayun's small report clearly to you. So your source of information is unreliable." Yi Ling thought so, but she didn't speak and kept her head down honestly. Sure enough, Wang Hongtao didn't expect him to answer at all. He snorted through his nostrils, looked at Yi Ling with disdain, and said, "I mean, you're already in your third year of high school. Why are you still so stubborn? I see you're just slacking off at school, why don't I find you a factory and go to work honestly? Isn't this good? I'm afraid it might affect other students learning at school. Don't waste educational resources like you." Wang Hongtao cursed so much that he spat at the stars. The teachers in the entire office were all looking at Yi Ling, and some even shook their heads with a regretful expression. More often than not, there is ridicule and disdain, as if such poor students should not appear on campus. Wang Hongtao became more and more excited as he spoke. Pointing fingers and making mistakes, along with Yi Ling's parents, also caused a lot of damage. Yi Ling looked at Wang Hongtao's hair and suddenly noticed a problem. He actually has hair. "Oh, yes, I almost forgot, I was reborn." Later, Yi Ling met Wang Hongtao on the street, and his shiny brain could reflect light. He was so old that even his front tooth had fallen out, and he walked with a crutch, just like when he was young and full of anger, cursing people. If it weren't for Yi Ling's deep impression of him, she would almost not have recognized him. Wang Hongtao cursed for a while and finally got tired. He picked up the large porcelain teapot on the table, took a sip of tea, and was about to continue cursing Yi Ling for being a bloody dog. Yi Ling suddenly said, "Teacher Wang, pay attention to taking care of your hair." Wang Hongtao was momentarily stunned by Yi Ling's jumping thinking. "I told you about the college entrance examination, and you told me about hair." I said, "Are you listening to me?" Wang Hongtao slammed the table and angrily stared at Yi Ling. Yi Ling couldn't help but suspect that if he were a lion, he probably wanted to swallow himself alive now. Yi Ling said lightly, "Teacher Wang, I was just impulsive." "Is impulse a reason?" "Impulse can do such shameless things without respect for propriety, righteousness, and integrity. Will the law forgive you for killing impulsively?" Wang Hongtao's mouth was like that machine gun, thrusting incessantly. Yi Ling complained in her heart, thinking to herself, "How could you handle anything? Give you a lever, you can lift the earth, right?" Yi Ling said, "I know the right balance, but in fact, I have a plan in my heart." Wang Hongtao rolled his eyes and said disdainfully, "You have a damn number, some of you are still here as a thug." He impatiently said, "Anyway, I've made everything clear to you. What do you love? I don't expect you to bring glory to the class or the school. All I ask is that you don't cause trouble for me. Don't disturb others' study of Luo Xiayun again in the future, otherwise." Wang Hongtao stared at Yi Ling with warning in his eyes. "Just leave my class. That's all for now," and Wang Hongtao has nothing to say. For this student, he has tried to persuade and scolded, but unfortunately, the other person is like a stone in a pit, smelly and hard, and he doesn't listen to anything he says. He had no choice but to give up. After all, with so many students in the class, we can't expect everyone to become successful. Yi Ling came out of the teacher's office and the bell for the end of class just rang. Wang Hongtao's martial arts skills are not inferior to those of the past, and he can even curse for 45 minutes. I really don't know where he gets so much anger every day. Chapter 4, Class Leader, Do You Like Me? You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. When they came out of the office, the students in the hallway looked curiously at Yi Ling. However, Yi Ling didn't care at all. He walked into the classroom confidently, and at the door, class monitor Su Xian was waiting for him. Su Xian is like a proud swan, with a proud glow in her eyes. She must have known she was wrong when she saw Yi Ling being called to scold for a whole class. So Su Xian said earnestly, "Yi Ling, you can't do this again in the future, you know. You need to study hard. It's less than half a year before the college entrance examination, but there's still time. You can't give up on yourself." Oh, this official accent is really well received by Wang Hongtao. "Why do you have to report to the teacher?" Yi Ling Diao said in front of her. Su Xian choked and thought he was asking for help. Just as she was about to find a reason to defend herself, Yi Ling's lips twitched and she asked, "Class monitor, do you like me?" Su Xian looked at Yi Ling in shock and said loudly, "Are you joking? Seeing me confess my love to the class monitor, it makes me so angry. What is it that I don't like?" Yi Ling flicked her hair with one hand and said proudly, "If you like me, just say it directly. After all, I'm so handsome, and there are so many people who like me." Su Xian turned red and ran away. When Yi Ling passed by Luo Xiayun's side, she even smiled at her. Luo Xiayun quickly turned her head to one side and opened the book to block Yi Ling's gaze. The class immediately began whispering, and Yi Ling became the center of gossip. When he returned to his seat, the boy in front of him, Zhou Cheng, turned his head and said with a smile, "Yi Ling, you can do it. I did something big without saying a word, and my brothers were all stunned." Yi Ling said, "What is this? Let's just make it clear, what a big deal. 20 years ago, teenage boys and girls were still very shy, and even when they received a love letter, their faces turned red to the point of blood dripping. Not to mention Yi Ling's confession in this way. A brave horse." The boys in the class quickly gathered around, chattering incessantly. "How about it, what did old Wang say? What else can I say? I must have scolded Yi Ling. Suddenly, everyone around burst into laughter. Ling said, "Old Wang, you still don't understand. Seize the opportunity and let yourself go. If you don't curse, it's not him anymore." Zhou Qingdao said, "What did Luo Xiayun say? Did she promise you?" The boys immediately chuckled vaguely. Ling waved her hand, indicating that she didn't want to talk about this matter. Then he took out the crumpled, pickled book from the drawer and began to read it seriously. Seeing Ling's posture, the boys around him were immediately shocked and their chins dropped. "Isn't it true that old Wang has really turned you into a pervert?" TSK, Ling is engaged in studying. The sun is really shining in the west. What kind of world-renowned painting is this? Ha ha ha. See how long he can hold on. Ling ignored the voices around her and began to read seriously. In his past life, he did not study hard. Since we are reborn, we must make up for this regret. In 2003, the era of the four heavenly kings gradually faded, and new Chinese music stars emerged. Eason's 10 years has become popular throughout the country. In the streets and alleys, the big speakers in the store are all playing, "10 years ago, I didn't know you, you didn't belong to me." This year, Jay Chou's popularity was soaring. The East Wind Breaks started the trend of China, chic music works. That year, my brother passed away on April Fool's Day, and a generation of superstars fell. The entertainment industry is full of ups and downs, with laughter and tears. People in this era have such a rich spiritual world. Ling, 18 years old this year. Rainy season youth, the most beautiful age, the most youthful time. In my 3rd year of high school, I was full of sweat, hard work, and an unwavering spirit. The best time, the best time. Countless people hate the 3rd year of high school, but when this year passes, the most nostalgic thing in the years to come is also the 3rd year of high school. If a person will give their all to do something in their lifetime, it should be in their 3rd year of high school. Ling Yu remembers the 100-day oath-taking ceremony for the college entrance examination. All hundreds of high school seniors recited their oaths loudly and walked through the door of success. When many people gather together to do the same thing, the scene is very shocking. The childish voice of the students pierced through the clouds and flew towards the high sky. Everyone's face is filled with longing for the future and longing for a better life. At such moments, even students with poor grades will involuntarily be shocked. Returning to such an era made Ling feel that it was a gift from heaven. Let him walk freely without any regrets this time. Reborn, Ling wants to take control of her destiny and completely change her own destiny. The first class after Rebirth is Chinese language class. Chinese class, the class with the highest sleep rate in high school. Ling used to dislike Chinese the most. Because endorsement is really boring. And if you can't memorize it, you'll be punished with plagiarism, and parents will be informed that every step is an endless pain. The class bell rang, and the sound of high heels came from far to near from the hallway. Cluck 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 cluck. This familiar voice. Chapter 5. Dinner goes, goodbye. You are listening at novel full.audio. Ling remembers that the Chinese teacher was a gentle woman who wore cheongsam and high heels in class all year round, and would carefully put on makeup every time. But it's because the voice is too gentle that the hypnosis rate is so high, especially when reading classical Chinese from textbooks. Within 10 minutes, the classroom was already filled with snoring. Chinese teacher Yang Yun walked in, wearing the fitted qipao as usual, with her fingernails dyed in color. Her hair is the most popular curly hair nowadays, meticulously tucked behind her head. Yang Yun was holding a stack of test papers under his arm. When he came in, he called the class representative and handed them out. Last month's exam, our class's grades were good. I can tell she's in a good mood, with a slight smile on her face. Especially class monitor Su Xian, except for a slight flaw in her composition, she answered the basic questions very well. Everyone should learn from her. Su Xian looked up proudly, accustomed to the envious gazes around her. Yi Ling was moved by the familiar voice for a moment. Yang Yun is one of the few high school seniors who is not solely focused on academic performance. Of course, she likes students with excellent grades, but also treats students with poor grades equally. Compared to her homeroom teacher Wang Hongtao, she feels like she's in the sky and the earth in Yi Ling's heart. Once, Yi Ling felt uncomfortable and wilted on the table. Wang Hongtao thought he was slacking off and scolded him. Later on, Yang Yun was very careful and saw that he was not feeling well during class, so he was asked to go to the medical room to take a look. Although this matter was just a responsibility for the teacher, Yi Ling was very moved. Especially after being scolded by the homeroom teacher, I felt warmth with my Chinese teacher. No one will refuse to care, especially when they are just sick and emotionally fragile. Seeing teacher Yang Yun again, Yi Ling recalled the warm feeling like a mother. After being reborn, Chinese language classes were still very boring for Yi Ling. But he didn't wander around like in his past life or simply fall asleep. Since it has been reborn, there must be a change in behavior. He is now an adult who knows how to restrain himself. Yi Ling endured the boredom and began to listen attentively. Zhao Feng, please memorize the second paragraph. The Chinese teacher scanned the whole class and fixed his gaze on Yi Ling's desk mate. I am most afraid of the teacher's sudden random check during class. At this moment, most of the class members were instantly startled and woke up, burying their heads in books like ostriches. I'm afraid it's my turn next. Zhao Feng whispered, damn it, bad luck. Then he stood up with a helpless expression on his face. Teacher, I don't know. Yi Ling's mouth curled up and couldn't help but laugh. Yang Yun glanced out of the corner of his eye and said lightly, Yi Ling, why are you laughing? Then you can help him carry it. Yi Ling. Okay, as long as it's a teacher. There is no absolute tenderness. Yi Ling said honestly, teacher, I don't know either. The Chinese teacher said helplessly, you two happen to make up a pile. Class monitor, come and set an example for your classmates. Su Xian was overjoyed by such a good performance opportunity and stood up for a moment. Not only wise men have a heart, but everyone has it. Su Xian's voice was clear and loud, with a proud expression on her face, and the text was catchy. The teacher nodded with an appreciative expression on his face. Well, sit down, that's great. Su Xian looked like a proud little peacock, proudly glancing at Yi Ling's direction. The teacher said, as for the two of you, copy this text 10 times and hand it over to me before school ends. Laughter of schadenfreude came from the classroom. Yi Ling suddenly remembered the fear of being dominated by high school transcription. I didn't expect to be punished with plagiarism on the first day of rebirth, I'm unlucky. The bell rang for the end of class, and Yang Yun put away his materials. Alright, class is over. Remember to eat on time, classmates. Studying in the third year of high school is hard, so take care of yourself. After explaining these things, she left. Yi Ling listened attentively to a Chinese class and realized that the courses she thought were boring were actually not so boring. On the contrary, he feels that he has learned a lot. And he began to reflect on whether he was ignorant and inexperienced in the past. Luo Xiayun is packing up her things. A shadow suddenly fell in front of me. Luo Xiayun looked up and found it was Yi Ling. She suddenly panicked, what did he come to do with him again? Su Xian saw that Yi Ling was looking for Luo Xiayun again, and suddenly became angry. Yi Ling, what are you doing again? Yi Ling ignored her and looked at Luo Xiayun. Luo Xiayun stuttered, what do you want? However, Yi Ling did not make any earth-shattering moves this time. He scratched his head and said, I'm sorry, did I scare you today? Luo Xiayun was taken aback. Did you actually come to apologize? Did the class teacher's words work? Luo Xiayun blinked her big eyes and looked at Yi Ling with a bewildered expression, as if she didn't know him. She is indeed very good looking, not the kind of aggressive beauty. It is a gentle beauty. Her eyebrows and eyes do not belong to the glamorous aspect, but are delicate. Just like the female lead in those years of the movie, with a standard first love face. Luo Xiayun is an 18-year-old Luo Xiayun, while Yi Ling is no longer the same stunned young person as 20 years ago. Although his body is still young, his mind is a mature middle-aged person. Facing one's former crush again, it is false to say not to be moved, but that emotion has actually slowly faded with the passage of time. Just like the gravel on the beach, after being repainted, the edges are smoothed out, leaving only a rounded appearance. Yi Ling no longer feels the passionate burning feeling towards Luo Xiayun as she did back then. Confessing is just to make up for one's regrets. However, in the face of Yi Ling's apology, Luo Xiayun did not appear to have that much trust. How can anyone reform themselves in just half a day? She bit her lip and remained silent. Although Yi Ling saw that Luo Xiayun didn't believe it, she didn't explain it too much. He just casually patted Luo Xiayun's shoulder. I'm going for dinner, goodbye. Then he turned around and ran away quickly. Su Xian's eyes suddenly widened and landed on the hand that patted Luo Xiayun's shoulder. Luo Xiayun has been in various shocks all day today, almost suspecting whether she is sleepwalking. She unconsciously stroked the shoulder that had been patted by Yi Ling, and her face suddenly turned red. Sweet text. Sweet text. Sweet text. Seeking various data support. Flowers, tips, monthly passes, reminders. All of them are needed. Depending on the situation, add more updates. There are too many saved manuscripts. Chapter 6 Objective. Starting from mathematics. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. In the third year of high school, where are the most people? Classroom. Playground. Laboratory. None of them are. But rather canteen. Qingshui Town Senior High School Canteen. Yi Ling looked up at the cafeteria gate, long time no see. The cafeteria has 3 floors in total. The first floor is the cafeteria of Grade 1 and Grade 2, the second floor belongs to Grade 3, and the third floor is the cafeteria for teachers, with reasonable allocation. The third floor, also known as the teacher cafeteria, is the most luxurious decoration and the best food. Generally speaking, only school teachers and leaders can go there to eat. But occasionally there are students with excellent grades who are taken by the teacher to eat, which can be considered as rewards. Of course, Yi Ling had never experienced it in her past life. Many students, like him, want to know what the food in the mysterious third-floor cafeteria tastes like. Go ahead. Hurry up, we're out of extra food. Why are you running so fast? Damn it, why aren't you so good at running during the sports meet? Whenever it's time to eat after class, there will always be a food grab battle on the school road. There are more than 10 classes in the whole grade, and everyone is not giving in to each other. Both boys and girls have put out their lifelong efforts, wishing to run at the speed of a 100-meter flying person. Yi Ling once again witnessed the power of high school students grabbing food, and couldn't help but laugh and cry. She also missed this feeling very much. After all, the third year of high school is really oppressive. Eating is not only a way to catch a breath during busy studies, but also one of the few times to release oneself. Especially when it comes to queuing for meals, there are really too many people. By running a few more steps, you can save some queuing time and return to the classroom to study. Yi Ling looked at the old leader's team and couldn't help but regret it. She should have finished her meal before going to talk to Luo Xiayun. However, the atmosphere of cooking is quite good. With so many people cooking, it makes people feel that the food has become more fragrant. 10 minutes later, Yi Ling's mouth twitched as she looked at Aunt Fan. Auntie, hold on. Please. It's time to beat rice and vegetables, and test one's character. The cafeteria lady's old hands trembled. Originally, you looked at a spoonful that was quite meaty, but you didn't have time to be happy. Then Auntie shook her hand and all that was left in the bowl was vegetable leaves. The shaking hands of the cafeteria waitress, one of the nightmares of my student days. The cafeteria aunt gave Ye Ling a sharp glance, feeling as if her family's martial arts had been exposed by outsiders. She paused, perhaps because she had a chance with Ye Ling, so she finally let him go. A spoonful of meat fell safely into Ye Ling's lunchbox. Ye Ling's face was filled with tears. She never expected that after 20 years, she could finally eat meat in her alma mater cafeteria. He held his lunchbox, found a seat, and began to wolf down. I can't blame him for not eating properly, after all, I've been thinking about this for many years. Ye Ling's heart was filled with tears as she ate, truly worthy of being the cafeteria of her alma mater, with such a delicious taste. And he only found out today that the school meat is so delicious. Thinking of this makes me even more eager to shed tears. It's simply heartbreaking. After finishing the meal, he returned to the classroom with satisfaction. Classroom, cafeteria, dormitory, home, 3 o'clock line, the boring life of high school students. Even going to the playground is a luxury. But I'm used to it and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. After finishing their meal, the students have started to gradually return to their seats. The first 3 rows are always the most active, already filled and starting self-study. For a moment, besides the sound of reading, there was also the sound of flipping papers and books in the classroom. Although the teacher hasn't come yet, the classroom has started to learn consciously. In such an atmosphere, Ye Ling couldn't help but start thinking about her future. More precisely, it is the future after rebirth. Since I have returned to my 3rd year of high school, yesterday's events have become fleeting. This is a very interesting phenomenon. After being reborn, the future you have experienced becomes your past. And your past, starting now, is your future. It may sound a bit convoluted, but it's actually not difficult to sort it out. For Ye Ling, since she is reborn, seize this opportunity and create a brand new future. The regret of not being able to express my love for Luo Xiayun has been made up for. Next, what he wants to do is to get into a good university. This matter is neither difficult nor difficult, after all, he has experienced the college entrance examination once. But the problem is, he has completely forgotten. Recalling it is no longer possible. Only by working hard again. Ye Ling flipped through a piece of paper from the drawer and began organizing a review plan. There are still 5 months left until the college entrance examination, at most 150 days. 6 exam subjects, with an average review time of less than a month for one subject. It is definitely impossible to catch all of them. Greed will only focus on one thing and lose the other. So Ye Ling decided that focused review should not be done in one go. Firstly, English is the weakest and it is a bit difficult to improve. Ye Ling wrote in English on the paper and then drew a red horizontal bar below. Improving Chinese language scores is the most difficult and time-consuming. He also drew a horizontal bar in the Chinese section. There are 3 main subjects, and there is still one subject left. Mathematics. The subject of mathematics is a bit magical, and for top students, it is very simple because no matter what question, there is only one final answer, just follow the process to calculate. But for underachievers, it's as difficult as heaven to learn it well. Those formulas are just like symbols in heavenly books, obscure and difficult to understand. Moreover, the examples taught in books are often very simple, but when it comes to doing exercises, it is rare to make people feel like crying. Mathematics is like a fickle little fairy. You think you understand, but in fact, you don't. But math scores come up quickly. One choice to fill in the blank is 5 points, and the following big questions often score in the 10s or 20s. The grading methods for math papers are different. Sometimes, if the process is correct but the result is not, the teacher will also give the score according to their own discretion. Ling decided to start with mathematics. Chapter 7. Cold wind blows. Moonlight is ambiguous. 2 updates. You are listening at novel full.audio. Evening self-study consists of 2 classes in mathematics and 2 classes in physics. Ling's high school has 12 classes a day, not considered early self-study. I have to wake up before dawn every day, and when I arrive at school to start morning self-study, even the rooster hasn't crowed yet. By the time school was over at night, it was so dark that I couldn't see my fingers. On the way back home, it was shrouded in stars and moon. Apart from the students, there was not even a ghost on the way. As the saying goes, high school students truly wake up earlier than chickens and sleep later than dogs. How about 10 years of hard study? Some people always say that students are unaware of their blessings, but little do they know that learning is actually another kind of hardship. Facing endless textbooks and exams every day, endless books to memorize, and endless homework to write. The brain is constantly operating under high load. Most high schools adopt closed management, with only 2 or 3 days off per month. Over the long term, people are very oppressive in such an environment. The life of high school students is so dull and boring, but precisely because of this, one of the things that students excel at the most is finding joy in adversity. This is also why many people miss their youth. It is imperfect, regrettable, but it is the most authentic. At night when school was over, as soon as the bell rang, someone eagerly rushed out of the classroom. The classroom became noisy, and the boys were playful and walking out with their backs hooked. There are other students in the class, peeking outside, waiting for their boyfriend/girlfriend to come out. The class gradually ran out of people. The street lights lit up, and the night breeze brought the fragrance of the roadside stall at the school gate. Ling turned a deaf ear to the noisy environment and still focused on her books. He is still writing a math paper, he must finish it today, otherwise he won't go home. Ling, won't you leave? Classmate carrying bag, looking at Ling. I'll learn again. The other party suddenly seemed to have seen a ghost. A shocked expression on his face. No, are you serious? Ling ignored him and buried herself in writing the exam paper. The classmate muttered, indeed, strange things tend to happen at night. As he spoke, he shook his head and walked away. After leaving the classroom door, he frequently turned back and looked at Ling like a monster. In fact, Ling's heart was shaken for more than half a minute. I've been studying all day, who wouldn't want to go back and rest early? But he has made up his mind to study hard this time. I used to always think about learning again tomorrow. I didn't study seriously for a day until I graduated from high school. Tomorrow is tomorrow, how many tomorrow will be? This kind of life, he should never repeat it again. His mentality is different from that of a teenage high school student, and adults know better how to persist in doing something. So Ling firmly chose to stay and continue writing the exam paper. People left one after another, and the on-duty staff also left after packing up their things. The life committee member who locked the door saw that the classroom was empty. Only Ling is sitting there alone. Ling, are you still not leaving? Ling shook her head and said, I have finished writing this paper. The life committee member scratched his head and said, okay, then remember to lock the door later. Got it. After everyone left, the corridor that became noisy after school gradually quieted down. The weather in January is still a bit cold. There is no heating in the classroom, and the windows are still slightly leaking. The wind was howling, and the school was as cold as an ice cellar. Ling rubbed her hands, her fingers turning red from the cold. She put down her pen and thought for a while before continuing to apply and wipe on the draft paper. In the quiet and spacious classroom, there was only the rustling sound of pen tips falling on paper. He focused on writing for about half an hour. Pa! The lights suddenly went out. The whole building was plunged into darkness. There are no emergency lights in the old building, and when it gets dark, it's no different from a haunted house. Only the moon in the sky, with a hint of sparse and cold white light shining down, barely able to see the road clearly. Ling suddenly realized that she had stayed so late without realizing it. The school has all lost power. When did it start, and he was the only one left? Learning so late is still the first time. Ling shook her head and packed her things before leaving. The stairs of the old building always give people a feeling of being on the verge of collapse, as if stepping a little harder would cause the building to collapse. This is the first time Ling has stayed at school so late. Before, every time he walked, he would step on the school bell. Before the bell could finish ringing, he had already sprinted 100 meters to the school gate. I didn't realize it before. This school is quite scary at night. Ling murmured softly. Without noisy students, the campus appears quiet and empty. The tall tree shadows envelop the campus path, a bit desolate. When people are focused on doing something, time passes quickly. I hardly noticed the passage of time, but it just passed by. The first day of rebirth has passed so unevenly. Standing at the school gate, Ling fell into a brief confusion. Just now he walked out according to his intuition, and now he feels startled that he should go home. It's not going back to the home in the city, but to the home in that small town in the past 20 years. After being reborn, I will be returning home for the first time. Ling's mood became somewhat complicated. Upon careful calculation, he and his parents have not seen each other for over a decade. Unable to say whether he was excited or happy, his heart felt stuffy and his throat seemed to be blocked by something, making him feel a bit choked up. The tip of the nose turns sour and the corners of the eyes turn red. Chapter 8. Memories surge into my heart. 3 updates, collect. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. Ling was born into a very ordinary working-class family. Both parents are ordinary workers in a small-town factory. At that time, there were many workers. Although a large number of workers were laid off and many factories closed down before this. But fortunately, Ling's parents managed to keep their jobs. Therefore, although their family may not be considered wealthy, they are not worried about food and drink, and can be considered a happy family of 3. Years passed in a plain and warm atmosphere, and Ling's parents were very kind to him. Although they were not wealthy, they would try their best to satisfy their son in life and not make him feel inferior. After entering high school, Ling became rebellious and sensitive due to a series of psychological changes during her growth period, commonly known as adolescence. He didn't start to obey his parents and teachers like he did when he was a child. Sometimes I even intentionally confront them and appreciate the angry or sad expressions on their faces. Ling's parents have a low level of education and do not understand that education is actually a complex thing. When dealing with their son's rebellion, they can only use simple and rough force or verbal scolding to suppress it. They also don't understand why children who used to be obedient and sensible have changed overnight. Over time, parent-child relationships have become increasingly bad. Both sides lack communication, and the less they communicate, the less they want to communicate, falling into a dead cycle. Sometimes when a cold war breaks out, a family can remain silent for several days. Due to not receiving good guidance, Ling's life has fallen all the way. Afterwards, I became increasingly distant from my parents. Although the parents tried their best to ease their relationship with their son later on, it was ultimately of no use. Ling remembers the day his mother was diagnosed with cancer, which was the first time he saw his father cry. That strong and resolute man, holding the medical record, tears streaming incessantly. That day was also the first time Ling had a big argument with her parents without meeting. He remembers that at his mother's funeral, his father was so sad that he fainted, and after waking up, he changed a lot. Not loving to speak, my spirit also becomes lethargic. My spine bent down, and a silver-white color appeared in my hair. Surprisingly, he has aged a lot. The father, who was not talkative at all, became more reticent. Without his mother to mediate, the father and son were basically silent at home. Over time, Ling couldn't bear the atmosphere at home, so she left. Memories came to a sudden halt here, and Ling felt a hot sensation in her eyes, as if something was about to emerge. Actually, there is no child who doesn't love their parents, and there is no parent who doesn't love their child. It's just that both parties used the wrong method during special circumstances. If Ling could be less stubborn during adolescence and show more understanding towards her parents. If parents can be less dominant, listen more to their children's true thoughts, let go of their elders' airs, and approach their hearts. So everything will be different. Unconsciously, Ling had already walked to her doorstep. More than 20 years ago, the tube-shaped building was allocated as a worker dormitory by the factory. A dozen or so households may live on the first floor. Each room is only 50.60 square meters in size, but it is filled with many families of 3. There are piles of miscellaneous items in the corridor, and some households with better environments have air conditioning cooling cases hanging outside. There are often black water stains on the ground, which cannot be mopped clean. The corners of the wall are damp all year round, and the shaded areas are covered with moss. There are also emerald vines winding upwards along the walls, and in summer, the entire building looks lush and green. Ling still remembers when she was a child. Every household sets up their kitchen outside. Therefore, at every cooking point, the corridor is filled with cooking fumes. The aroma of the food can be wafted out by the wind for several meters. Some children can smell the aroma of cooking at home and automatically go home to eat when it's time. Ling belongs to the one who always has to be shouted at by her parents at the top of her lungs, and finally gets her ears rolled back. Memories drifted far and wide. Looking up, I had already walked downstairs. When I habitually went to my pocket, I remembered that in high school, I used to hang the key on the belt buckle of my pants. When she took out the key, Ling's hand still trembled a bit. Being close to hometown is even more timid. Although I have thought of my parents several times in my memories, when I really want to see them, I feel a bit timid. Are you afraid of facing the past time, or are you afraid of seeing familiar parents and being unable to control your emotions? During high school, his relationship with his parents had become very strained. Almost to the point of not speaking much. He shook his hands and inserted the key into the lock, turning it to the right. Click. The old iron door made an unbearable clicking sound and slowly opened inward. A faint warm yellow light projected out from the crack in the open door and hit Ling's face. The familiar taste of clear congee came to his nostrils. He used to study hard in high school. Almost every night, his mother would cook him some snacks. Sometimes it's a bowl of egg noodles, sometimes it's a clear congee dish. Various emotions are complex and chaotic. Ling's nose was sore, and tears were almost falling. He sorted his emotions and pushed the door open before walking in. Mom, I'm back. Chapter 9. Suddenly Grow Up. For updates, seeking collection. You are listening at novel full.audio. Wang Yan was cooking congee in the kitchen. When he heard the sound, he turned back. I'm back now. Put down your things, eat some first, and then go rest after finishing. She was wearing a plaid apron, which was a bit old and covered in scattered oil stains. Ling remembers seeing her mother wearing this apron in elementary school and never changing it off until high school. At this time, my mother had not yet been diagnosed with cancer and still had a rosy and healthy complexion. Ling inherited Wang Yan's double eyelids and good skin. I remember my father once said that my mother was a famous beauty in the factory when she was young. The workers who pursue her are able to line up from the front door to the back door and circle around the factory a few times. But your mother happened to take a liking to me. Do you know how many people envied your father and me back then? TSK, at that time, I had to wake up with a smile even in my dreams. At the dinner table, Ye Xiong drank too much and said to his son drunkenly. The gaze is an unstoppable display of pride. And the dejected appearance after Wang Yan's death was completely different. Those painful memories seemed to suddenly become very distant, separated by a layer of mist, hazy and unclear. And now, a healthy mother stands in front of her, still looking familiar. Wang Yan looked at her son and was startled. Hurriedly walked over and said, "You, what's wrong with you? Did you suffer injustice at school? Tell mom what's going on." She reached out to stroke Yi Ling's cheek, and after working in the factory for a long time, her palms had become rough. But Yi Ling didn't feel any discomfort, because these hands were very warm. The temperature in his palm was scorching, like a warm current flowing into his heart on a cold winter night. Yi Ling choked up and said, "Mom." Wang Yan became even more anxious, looking at his son's bright red corner of the eye with an indescribable heartache. "Well behaved, what's wrong with you?" Yi Ling shook her head and said, "It's nothing, I just missed you." Wang Yan looked inexplicably, "What?" Yi Ling smiled with tears of joy and shook her head. "It's really nothing, I'm just too happy." Wang Yan frowned, although at this age, there were already some wrinkles around the corners of her eyes, and her skin was not as smooth and delicate as when she was young. But you can still see from it the appearance of factory flowers when you were young. "Are you really okay? Don't scare mom." Yi Ling repeatedly promised that everything was okay, and it was only then that Wang Yan finally calmed down. However, he turned his head and cursed, "Little rabbit, if it's okay, you'll cry and make me worried." She twisted Yi Ling's ear, but didn't exert any force. The sound of scolding really had the same flavor as before, and Yi Ling burst out laughing. With a smile, tears streamed down the corners of my eyes. He turned around and quietly wiped away his tears with one hand. Wang Yan stopped the fire in the kitchen, put congee on the table and served it in a bowl. "All right, stop honking around. What time is it? Hurry up and eat, take a shower, and go to bed. I still have to go to school early tomorrow morning." Yi Ling said while drinking congee, "Where's Dad?" "Sleeping." "Well, he works hard and goes to bed early when he comes back." "I'll go see him," Yi Ling said thoughtfully. He threw down the bowl and ran into his parents' bedroom. Wang Yan shouted from behind, "Hey, aren't you drinking? What's wrong with this child today?" She muttered with a confused expression on her face. Yi Ling turned on the bedroom light and Yi Xiong lay on the bed, familiar snoring echoing in the bedroom. At this time, the father, who was 40 years old, appeared to be older than his actual age due to long-term hard work in the factory. But the prestige remains the same as before. The big and small things at home, such as changing light bulbs and repairing household appliances, are not a problem. I often help the old lady next door fix the TV. In Yi Ling's heart when she was a child, her father was the most powerful person in the world. What really makes this person grow old is the death of his wife, and this incident has had a huge impact on him. Yi Ling pushed the person on the bed and shouted, "Dad, Dad." Yi Xiong snorted twice, even flipped over but didn't wake up. Yi Ling couldn't help but laugh and cry, and used the trick she used when she was a child. He extended his thumb and index finger, pinching his father's nose. Sure enough, after snoring for a few seconds, Yi Xiong woke up from his dream. What's going on?" Yi Xiong struggled to sit up and saw his son sitting by the bed, cursing, "Little rabbit, are you too idle to panic?" Yi Ling said, "Dad, I'm back." "Nonsense, just sit here." Yi Xiong impatiently said, Go take a shower and sleep when you come back. What's the point of messing around with me?" In high school, the relationship between the father and son was very strained. If it weren't for Wang Yan's mediation, I didn't know what it would be like. Over 20 years have passed, and Yi Ling is no longer the teenage boy who only knew how to be angry. He whispered, "Dad, it's my fault. I shouldn't have argued with you yesterday." Yi Xiong was taken aback and looked at him with suspicion. "Have you changed your personality, kid?" He still doesn't know how complicated his son's heart is now. How many emotions are surging. Yi Ling smiled. "In the future, I won't argue with you and Mom anymore." Really? Yi Xiong looked at Yi Ling in shock, feeling mixed emotions for a moment. My son has finally grown up. He is a big man who doesn't know how to express his emotions. I want to reach out and hug my son, but I feel a bit embarrassed. In the end, he just placed his hand on Yi Ling's shoulder and patted it hard. "Okay, that's good. Dad knows, you're sensible." He sighed and said, "My parents also did something wrong. They don't understand how to observe the emotions of your children. Sometimes they scold you, so don't take it to heart." Yi Ling shook her head and said, "No, we will get along well in the future." "Okay, okay." Yi Xiong's eyes flickered with tears of emotion. On this winter night, this middle-aged man was moved by his own son. He murmured, "As long as you're happy, parents can rest assured." "Okay, then take a break. I'll go out first." When Yi Ling returned to the kitchen, Wang Yan was still waiting for him to come back to drink congee. "Mom, go to bed first. I'll tidy up the kitchen later." Wang Yan said, "What do you want your child to tidy up? Mom will come by herself, you still have to go to school tomorrow." Yi Ling insisted, "I'll come. You should rest early and don't work too hard." Wang Yan was somewhat moved, and his son would feel sorry for him. She also didn't want to brush Yi Ling's filial piety, and it was rare for her son to come back and say a few more words to her parents. "Okay, just throw away the bowl. Mom will wash it tomorrow, and you should go to bed early too." Yi Ling nodded. "Mom." Wang Yan was about to return to his room when he stopped at the words. "Hey, what's going on?" Yi Ling thought for a moment, but still didn't say anything. "It's okay, good night." Good night." Wang Yan hesitated for a while, feeling that something was wrong with Yi Ling today. But without careful consideration, he turned around and went back to his room. At night, Yi Ling finished taking a shower and was about to rest when she heard voices coming from her parents' bedroom. Yi Xiong said, "What's wrong with my son today?" Wang Yan said in confusion, "I don't know either. Maybe I was stimulated for a while. But he apologized to me." "Really? Oh, that's really great. It's so sensible, so sensible." Wang Yan said excitedly. Yi Xiong said leisurely, "Yes, I think he has grown up." Yi Ling stood outside the door and listened for a while, then curved her lips and went back to her room to sleep. Chapter 10. Mom. Who exactly is your biological? You are listening at novel full.audio. I had no dreams all night. Yi Ling doesn't even remember when she last slept so soundly. In high school, he rebelled and liked to confront his family. He often made a fuss and ended up sleeping alone. Later on, when I grew up, I had to work hard for survival, working overtime almost every day until late at night, and getting up early the next day to start work. Even dreaming is a part of work. Almost never without burden, when you can sleep peacefully. After being reborn, all the irritability and unease seemed to have become fleeting. Yi Ling slept very well, very sweet. Bang bang bang. The knocking on the door sounded, and Yi Ling vaguely heard someone speaking. It seems that a guest has arrived. Early in the morning. He rolled over, covered his ears with the pillow, and continued to sleep soundly. However, the next second, the door was pushed open with a creaking sound. Yi Ling, where did you go yesterday? A crisp and pleasant sound, like that of a lark, rushed into Yi Ling's ears. Before he could react, he felt a chill on his body and the blanket was lifted open. "Auntie, it's only a few degrees outside. Do you want to freeze me to death? Without saying a word, Ye Ling snatched back the blanket. In those few seconds, she almost followed the ice cellar. A cute face appeared before his eyes. Her skin is fair and there are two cute pink blushes on her face. There seems to be a spring of clear water flowing in both big eyes. Long eyelashes flickered and often reminded Ye Ling of the big white cat fed by her aunt downstairs. Lips as rosy as petals, with pure white teeth. Memories abound, and this lovely and ghostly girl was Ye Ling's childhood sweetheart, Zhenran. Zhenran, who lives next door to Ye Ling, was born in the same year as him. The two have known each other since wearing open crotch pants and were born in the same hospital. Starting from kindergarten, I have been classmates for over a decade in elementary, middle, and high school. What is this? In movies and TV dramas, it's a perfect childhood sweetheart script. Even the parents of both families occasionally look at their children with a loving mother's smile. Generally speaking, this kind of script ends with the male and female protagonists happily living together. But reality is always different from fantasy. Ye Ling and this little girl have been together for so many years, and it seems like there hasn't been a single spark. Yuan and Yin are really too familiar. To what extent was it cooked, until the age of 5 or 6, when the two of them were still sleeping in the same bed? Sometimes when parents are busy, they entrust their children to the next door. Both families are almost becoming one. According to this logic, the relationship between Ye Ling and Zhenran is not so much a childhood sweetheart as a sibling. No, it's even closer than siblings. Zhenran was a crazy girl when she was a child, like a little tyrant in Qingshui town kindergarten, always rushing forward and backward at a young age. On the contrary, Ye Ling was quite quiet at that time. Once, Ye Ling was bullied by a bear child in the big class, and Zhenran was furious. He punched her on the spot. Beat the children in the big class to tears. Ye Ling, who was only a little over 3 years old at the time, was stunned and pointed to Zhenran's hand, saying, your hand is bleeding. Are you okay? Zhenran casually rubbed against her clothes and said, it's just a bit torn, it's okay. Since then, Zhenran has established a fierce image in Ye Ling's heart. Ye Ling dare not tell her that when he was young, he always treated Zhenran as a boy. Later, as time passed, the two of them grew bigger and bigger. As the saying goes, when a woman is 18 years old, Zhenran has transformed from a small tyrant in kindergarten to a well-behaved and charming neighbor sister in the blink of an eye. Everyone around her sweetly called out uncle, auntie, and grandparents, and everyone around her praised her for being sensible. When she was a child, Zhenran was very cute, but her hair was cut short and she rolled on the ground all day, just like a tomboy. Zhenran, who grew up to become a handsome young girl, had slightly longer hair, about a little below her shoulders. Of course, no matter how cute her appearance is, it doesn't feel much to Ye Ling. He looked at Zhenran and always remembered the scene of her punching and overturning that bear child when she was a child. That scene left a great shock on Ye Ling's young soul, to the extent that he had overlooked Zhenran's beauty and his mind was filled with her fierce personality. The bedding in winter and the air-conditioned room in summer are the two most unbearable places to leave. Zhenran rudely tugged at Ye Ling's quilt again, with an angry expression on her face. Auntie waited for you in the cold wind for over half an hour yesterday, why didn't you say it? Ye Ling suddenly remembered that she did indeed go home with Zhenran every day. Now it was his fault, and he hurriedly said, okay, I was wrong. Alright, let's treat you to barbecue after school today. Is that okay? Zhenran snorted and received an apology, but her anger dissipated halfway. However, he still said unhappily, don't think I'll forgive you like this. Ye Ling begged for mercy and said, I understand. Miss Zhenran, why don't you go have breakfast first? I will come back to apologize to you later. Zhenran let go of Ye Ling's quilt and turned around to go out. Ye Ling breathed a sigh of relief, unable to laugh or cry. After this fuss, all the drowsiness disappeared. It was also time for school, so he got up with a helpless expression to change clothes and go wash up. After Ling finished washing up, she went to the kitchen to have breakfast, and Zhenran had been waiting for him for most of the day. There is a pot of porridge on the table, and several dishes with congee. Zhenran also has a cup of delicious milk on hand. Wang Yan was serving dishes to Zhenran and muttered, Ran is so thin, you need to eat more. Zhenran smiled and said, Auntie treats me the best, and the dishes you cook are so delicious that I always eat until I'm full. Wang Yan touched her head, so happy that wrinkles burst into laughter. Ling saw this scene of deep affection between mother and daughter early in the morning, and it was understandable. He said sincerely for the 1000th time, Mom, why don't you consider Xiaoran as your daughter? Wang Yan glared at Ling and said, Damn it, you're such a water-spirited girl. I'm going. Uncle Zhen, can't you be in a hurry with me? Zhenran hurriedly said, Auntie, regardless of our relationship, in my heart, you are as close as my own mother. Wang Yan looked extremely moved, repeatedly praising Zhenran for being sensible and being a little cotton-padded jacket. Let's take a look at our debt collector again. She looked at Ling with disdain, sighed, and shook her head. Ling. Zhenran laughed heartily and gulped down half a glass of milk in one gulp. Ling exclaimed, Mom, where's my milk? Am I your own? Actually, you hugged the wrong person in the hospital back then. Xiaoran is your biological daughter. Wang Yan let out a pooh sound and said, I do want to ask Uncle Zhen if he is willing to have a son like you. Ling is speechless, where else can he have a place in this family? Alright, you two, hurry up and eat. After finishing, go to school, Wang Yan urged. Ling snored a few times before finishing the porridge in front of her, then took a steamed bun and put her backpack on her back. Walk and watch the car. Take good care of Ran. Wang Yan shouted as usual before leaving. Got it. Ling lengthened her voice. Zhenran chuckled non-stop on the side and said, When we were kids holding hands and going to elementary school, my aunt told you that. Now that we are both in high school, she still says that. Ling said helplessly, No, my mother treasures you so much. How dare I not listen to her? You said she liked her daughter so much that she gave birth to a son in the hospital. Did she really regret it at that time? Zhenran said sympathetically, Of course, only my aunt has a kind heart. Otherwise, you would have been packed and given away long ago. Ling laughed and cursed, Are you still getting angry? Zhenran made a face and said, Just this, you hit me. After speaking, he turned around and ran, provoking while running, Can you catch up with me? Ling smiled and said, Look at the road. On the early morning road, the sky is still hazy. 2 high school students, one in front and one behind, walked briskly towards the school.